I've got a quick favour to ask. Did you know that only 25% of the people watching our videos are actually subscribed to the channel? We really appreciate your support. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now's the perfect time to do it. By subscribing, you'll not only get the latest episodes of Water Action Platform, but also the executive podcast straight to your feed. Also, you'll be the first to know when new IEL insights drop. It's a great way to stay ahead of the curve with all things water innovation, sustainability, and industry trends. So hit subscribe and make sure you're part of the conversation. We've got some exciting content coming your way, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. It's Thursday, 20th of March 2025, and welcome to the Water Action Platform. Our theme for this month is interconnectedness. We all live upstream, and we'll be looking at how people work together, or not. But first, our thanks go to the amazing organisations shown here. These fantastic people, champions at working together, make this free knowledge sharing initiative possible. If you dial in regularly, you'll spot some new names. Gippsland Water, Goulburn Valley Water and Taswater in Australia, Severn Trent in the UK, Neom in the KSA, and Águas e Energia de Porto in Portugal. They are the sponsors of the Executive Exchange, a 15-minute podcast where leading executives from the water sector share their stories with Dr. Piers Clark to entertain, but also to inspire and inform us. Here is the link. The Executive Exchange is available through podcast platforms including Spotify, Amazon, Audible, Pocket Casts, Podcast Addict, Deezer, and Player FM. We start with the X Prize, a $190 million competition to drive access to clean water from reliable, sustainable, and affordable sources. The person leading this fine initiative is Dr. Lauren Greenlee. We heard from her last September when she came on the Water Action Platform to share news about the X Prize launch. Piers recently reconnected with Lauren for an update on how things have gone and also for some important changes.
Lauren, thank you for joining us again. Let's jump straight in. Remind us, what is the X Prize?
So we're a nonprofit foundation, and we design and then execute global competitions that we call prizes. They are focused on innovations in technology to solve humanity's greatest challenges. And we are unique in that all of our teams that are competing are actually demonstrating their technology, doing physical demonstration and testing during the course of a prize.
And we're here on the Water Action Platform because one of the many streams of the X Prize is focused on water. Tell me about that one.
So our current prize that we're running is called Water Scarcity, and it is focused on seawater desalination specifically. Side note, we do have to get specific with the prize focus because we want to make it a good competition. So we recognize there's lots of challenges in water, lots of potential topics we could focus on, but seawater desalination is the focus for this particular prize.
Excellent. Now, we last spoke, I think it was October, and quite a lot's happened since then, and a few things have changed. So update us.
Yes. So let's see. In October, we were still sort of in the middle of our registration period. So we are actually headed into the last few months of registration. So just to remind your audience, in our desalination prize, we actually have two competitions. So we are calling them Track A and Track B. Track A is a systems level competition. So teams will be building and demonstrating a whole system, desalination system. Track B is focused on materials innovation, so novel desalination materials. Both of those, registration is still open, so people still have time to register and become teams in the prize. Track A will close, registration will close the end of March. So that's coming up really quickly. Track B, we actually extended the deadline. So originally it was January, it's now extended to the end of May. So May 30th is the registration deadline for Track B.
Excellent. I think this will go out, this broadcast will go out on March the 20th. So okay. That will, the Track A people really will have to get their skates on it.
Yes.
Really running with it.
Yes.
Wonderful. And that's a new development from last October, isn't it? These two tracks.
Yeah, so the timeline for track B, extending that is a big change. We really wanted to have more time to allow teams to come in. I'd also like to share, I would say, a couple other big changes. So for track A, the original focus was on teams with full solutions. What we've realized, and I'm sure many in your audience know this, what we've realized is that many innovators have a component that they've innovated or they have a new technology, but they don't have the full desalination system. So we are now allowing component level teams to be a part to come into track A, in at least in our qualifying round. And then we're hosting a series of team matchmaking and collaboration events to help teams that are component level find partners, find collaborators to match up and become or have a full system to then compete. So that's a big change, really opening the aperture to more innovators who want to compete at the systems level. The other big change, so track B, was originally focused on innovations in membranes specifically for desalination. That we've seen with feedback from teams and from experts in the field that that's too narrow and that there's a lot of innovation happening outside of membrane technology for desalination. So track B is now open to any material or method that is the desalination step. So still focused on the desalination step, so separating salt from water, but innovators who have any kind of method, so it can be electrochemical, it could be thermal, it can be whatever, or material, they can apply to track B. And that's a big change, really, again, opening the aperture to more innovators.
Excellent. Thank you.
So there you have it. 3 important things to note. Firstly, if you're one of the competitors who's struggling to find a partner, we encourage you to engage on those collaboration events that Lauren mentioned. Secondly, Track A has a deadline of the end of March, but the deadline for Track B has been extended until the end of May. And thirdly, note that important widening of the scope of Track A. We will reconnect with Lauren later this year to find out how judging for Track A has gone. Today's first sector expert is Professor Leopoldo Mendoza Espinosa, Leo, who has dedicated his career to working on the complex problems on both sides of the US-Mexico border. Leo lives in Ensenada, Baja California, famous for being downstream of most water users in the Colorado River system, including some famous big dams like Hoover Dam in Arizona, Nevada. He also has the dubious honor of being one of my oldest and dearest friends. And when I say dearest, you need to know that I let him and his amazing wife bring their lovely son to my otherwise child-free wedding. So I was absolutely delighted to have a long conversation with him. We both got much too carried away. Here are some highlights.
I work at the Oceanographic Research Institute of the University of Baja California in Mexico. I've been working here for 25 years now. And yeah, that's right. We know each other for a very long time.
Oh, wow.
In this time, I have been working especially with wastewater treatment and reuse, and also with water management issues in Baja California and in the frontier with the US border.
Okay. That fits perfectly with this webinar's theme, which is we all live upstream. And I'm going to kick off with the contentious subject. So the Colorado River, of course, it serves both the US and Mexico. Climate change is reducing its flow. So how do you see this affecting the bilateral water agreements between your two countries over the coming sort of years and decades?
Yes, the Colorado River is a very large river, and it provides water to almost 40 million people in 7 US states. And in Mexico, it provides water to 2 Mexican states, to Baja California and Sonora, to approximately 2.7 million people. Now, there is a water treaty in between both countries, signed in 1944, in which the US should allocate water through the Colorado River to Mexico. It should allocate a volume of 1,850 million cubic meters per year.
Okay.
But this has been modified, for some years now because of climate change. Because the Colorado River holds less water now, and so some water allocation reductions have been applying to Mexico for the past couple of years. Some of them represent some 10% at the moment, of the overall yearly allocation. But again, because of projections, we are expecting, or actually there is agreement between the countries that these reduction in allocations are going to increase in the following years.
Oh, wow. So how can Mexico protect its water rights, or are there specific mechanisms in the current treaties that have proven effective?
To be honest, we are kind of unprepared for this, although projections are, available for so many years. But perhaps we don't like to respond, to the problem until we have the problem right in front of us. And that's what's happening right now. As I said, there is now some reduction in water allocation to Mexico. And this is having an impact, especially in the Mexicali Valley, which is in Baja California, and it's a big agriculture farming, agriculture valley.
Okay.
And however, the farmers are now using more groundwater to supply, water for their crops instead of using surface water. Okay, so at the moment, the aquifer, has water, but again, in 5 years, in 10 years, if things, do not,
it won't have
rain, because of the impact of climate change, then also the aquifer is going to be overexploited, and now that water is not going to be available for crop production.
This is a complicated issue. There's a rich country upstream of a less rich one, both of which suffer water shortages, and both need to ensure water for important societal needs like food security. I asked Leo how he thought Mexico might rise to the complex set of challenges that this creates.
One of the things that I really pursue is wastewater reuse. So this wastewater reuse has to be done very responsibly. Okay, we have schemes in many places in the world in which untreated wastewater is used for agriculture. And I mean, we can understand that, but the health, issues related to this are very, very concerning.
Important. Crop safety is super important. And you work on this, don't you? You personally work on this subject.
Exactly. But there are also some nice, examples of when things are done properly, and following guidelines and following, a recipe, let's say, for success, then they can be successful. And like, for example, here in Ensenada, we managed to reuse water when the wastewater treatment plants were working really, really good. And basically, we reactivated parts of a valley that had salty water and they couldn't produce anything. So now with the wastewater, they could produce flowers again and some fodder. But the problem is that whenever the wastewater, it all depends on the wastewater treatment. So when if the plant is not being maintained properly, then obviously the quality comes down, and instead of solving a problem, we're generating a problem because now we are polluting the fields, and we are polluting creeks and things like that. So I always insist that this has to be done responsibly.
And that agricultural runoff will have an impact on transboundary water quality as well, surely.
Yes, and if we can provide the farmers with this treated wastewater that they can use for their fields, then they can, let's say, transfer the water rights to the city. So now the city can have more water for urban uses. Okay, so that's
like a
that's
water credit trading.
Exactly, and then you have a balance, in the system. You don't need a desalination plant. You don't need a new aqueduct to bring water from somewhere else. You can keep the balance, within.
Local.
Exactly, local.
Yeah. Thank you, Leo. As Leo said, droods and flouts are local issues. Water is a commodity. Water that has been treated to make safe and then delivered to the point of use has to be paid for. But it suffers the reverse of the economies of scale, as in the more you want, the further you have to go to get it. Bulk transfer schemes are expensive ways to alleviate shortages, and when they cross national boundaries, they are also contentious politically. This proposed desalination plant on the Sea of Cortez has a 300-kilometer aqueduct that would deliver water to Arizona that would cost 10 or 11 times more than Colorado River water would. Local water conservation and demand management makes much more sense. Humankind is actually really good at this, or at least we used to be. Societies in arid climates like the Sonoran Desert in Baja California or the Gulf of Oman Desert have ingenious water systems to manage equitable access to water, like a flage. Who better to explain Oman's ancient water management networks than my friend, colleague, and fellow water nerd? Over to you, Rashmina.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Rashmina William, and I'm a Senior Project Manager with the ISLE Americas office. Those of you who've seen my handshake video on the ISLE website will know that my time growing up in Oman was what really sparked my love for water. As a desert nation, Oman has always had a deep cultural connection to water that shapes how it's obtained, used, and valued by society. One of the country's historical connections to water is its aflage system, a series of surface and underground aqueducts that's nearly 2,000 years old. So what is a flage? Flage, plural aflage, are gravity-fed channels used to route water from a source above or below ground to where it's needed while minimizing lost evaporation. Aflage Dalia are the oldest type of flage in Oman and make up about half of all remaining system. And these flage systems collect rainwater diverted by small dams and use them to primarily provide water for farming and other non-drinking water uses. Flage Ainia are spring-fed flage systems that convey water through shallow channels and aqueducts. These are typically very short channels, usually less than a kilometer in length, and they're mostly used for agriculture. They make about roughly a quarter of Oman's remaining flage systems. And finally, we have Aflage Daoudi, which source high-quality water from an underground mother well, or al Flage. These underground flage systems can be up to 60 meters below the surface and many, many kilometers long, making them very difficult to construct and to maintain. But they convey very high-quality water all the year round that can be used for many different purposes, including drinking water and ablution. Flages obviously provide a link to the past. Ancient legends claim that King Solomon commanded his army of jinn to dig Oman's flage systems in a single day. However, modern researchers believe that Oman's flage systems originated in Persia and were introduced to Oman thousands of years ago when its climate became markedly drier and hotter. Modern flages date back to about 500 AD, but archaeological excavations indicate similar flage practices in the area dating back to as far back as 2500 BCE. And flages have become entwined with the cultural and religious practices of Oman. So the day-to-day management of flage water is regulated by Fiqh al-Ma, which is a uniquely Omani branch of Islamic law that enshrines the fair sharing of water as a basic human right. It's one of the earliest forms of water law, and it manages the sharing of water between the towns, villages, and farms along a flage as guided by astronomical observations. However, Oman's flage systems are deeply embedded with the present as well. They support agriculture across the country to this day. Dates, pomegranates, and Jebel Akhtar's famous roses, which are used to manufacture Omani rosewater, are just a few of the crops supported by aflage systems. In fact, some Omani researchers estimate that aflage systems supply nearly 36% of the nation's freshwater requirements. In 2006, UNESCO awarded World Heritage status to 5 Oman's villages in recognition of their importance to the country's history and culture. In Nizwa, Village Daras has been integrated into a public park, which I actually got to visit on my last trip home. And watching families picnic and play near a system that brings the weight of nearly 1,500 years of history was a wonderful reminder of just how much water connects us all across time and space. With that, thank you for listening, and Joe, back to you.
Thank you, Rashmina. I love this. Aflage are not only engineering marvels, but also cultural treasures that demonstrate the resilience and resourcefulness of ancient societies. It often feels to me as if we've lost this connectedness, this humanness, in a world where we're less socially cohesive, but more digitally connected than ever before. However, the digital connections that we have, now more than ever in human history, can also be a powerful tool for us to help each other, even when we aren't in close physical proximity. Glenn Oliver is founder of H2Bid and H2Bid Parts. H2Bid Parts RC project provides an unusual digital platform for utilities to help each other out all the time, but especially in times of crisis. Glenn, it's amazing to have you back. Thank you for coming back to the Water Action Platform. We haven't spoken together. It's great. And we haven't spoken like this since 2022. So an awful lot has changed, including folks in the audience. So for them, please give us, in a nutshell, who Glenn is, who H2Bid are, and what it is that you do.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be back. I missed you. So in a nutshell, I'm Glenn Oliver, CEO of H2Bid. And I've been in the water industry for over 20 plus years. Oh boy, time flies. And I started out early on as a water commissioner for a large utility here in the States, and have since moved on, and I've been in the private sector since then, since I left the public sector. And a real quick background, I got into the helping co-found this company because really briefly, as a water commissioner, we had to improve facilities and spend a lot of money, and we had to increase water rates. And it just occurred to me that those of us who are stewards of the water industry ought to do everything that we can to try to keep water rates as low as possible. And so I helped co-found this company to provide solutions that help water utilities either save money or improve efficiency in some way. So everything we do is related to that.
Okay.
And so H2Bid focuses on providing data and software solutions to the water wastewater utility sector.
Okay, so you work with online platforms, and the one I'm particularly interested in is your RC platform, which I know you set up it uniquely facilitates transboundary management of resources and collaboration across national boundaries. What are the primary challenges that you saw from your time in the utilities, in the public sector, that H2Bid was set up to solve?
Well, the biggest thing is we're in the water industry, and there's this phrase called fragmentation that we always talk about, which is basically, in a nutshell, that water utilities are pretty much siloed, and everybody does their own thing, which means that there's a lot of duplication of effort. There's not enough knowledge sharing. And when you have something occur, maybe it's an emergency and you need materials, critical parts in an emergency, and maybe your supplier is out, how do you find a utility that may want to help you?
Can you give us a couple of examples, or can you give the Action Platform audience a couple of examples of cost savings or knowledge transfer that's been achieved through RC, through your cross-border platform?
Sure. I think there are a couple of areas where we've seen cost savings. One is the platform, because it's a virtual community. And let me back up for a second and tell people a little bit about what it is and how it works. So it's a platform that's really focused on what we call, the core of it is material standards information. So what we do is we meet with the utility. We get all of the data about all the parts and materials that they use in their infrastructure. And usually that's a download from maybe their inventory management system or their ERP system. And we get all the specifications, the approved manufacturers, catalog numbers, descriptions,
all the specs, all the technical
all the specs, technical specs,
okay.
the written technical specs, if they have photos, everything. We put it all goes into a database. It's very unique in that regard. And then that data is cross-referenced through AI with the same data from other utilities. So when you go into the database, you can you're not limited to, you can search your own data, but you can also search the data from other utilities. And so it allows for, it's what we call a data sharing community, a data sharing platform. So what it also is now that we have the data in, it's got some procurement components to it as well. So you're seeing lots of cost savings, both in terms of time. It allows you to save money by using it for procurement if you want. It also has a cooperative procurement module. So utilities are saving money by buying in bulk. Buying collaboratively. It also has a surplus outlet, so utilities are able to list and buy surplus materials that they may not need any longer, or maybe you bought too much, or you're looking for surplus, and so that's another area where it's an amazing but very simple concept, but you find savings where you have a utility that may need something in an emergency, and say your supplier's out. We've had situations where a utility is able to go into our surplus outlet and find an item that they couldn't find anywhere else for free at another utility that they were able to get in a matter of days. In one instance, you had a utility that was expected to be down for 6 weeks, and they were able to get the part for free from another utility in the surplus outlet in 3 days. So it's that kind of thing.
And then people can pick themselves up after disasters and deal with emergencies so much better.
Exactly.
How do you handle with this data sharing? How do you handle transparency in data sharing between nations? Because this is a transboundary initiative.
On one hand, there's no data in there that, even if it were shared beyond the utilities, that would create any kind of vulnerability. And secondly, because there's no real marketability of the data, there's no hackers that would be interested in that at all. But I will say the system's never been down, it's never been hacked, so we've never had any problems with that.
Thank you, Glenn. This is amazing in its simplicity. Find what you need, sell what you don't. H2Bid Parts has rolled out within the USA and into 8 other countries. It enables real-time resource sharing, cooperative purchasing, and mutual aid through providing surplus stock. Here are the contact details if you're interested in joining this virtual community. And finally, something relaxing. Why do warm alcoholic drinks taste stronger than cold ones? Well, chemists have found a link between the taste of a drink and the shapes formed by its water and ethanol molecules. Beer is most refreshing when it's ice cold, while spirits like whiskey taste more alcoholic at warmer temperatures. And those shifts in flavour are due to the way water and ethanol molecules cluster together. Researchers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences studied how temperature and alcohol by volume, or ABV, affect molecular behaviour in beer, wine and spirits, and what that means for their taste. They first measured the surface tension of these beverages while increasing their ABV levels. Then, they used nuclear magnetic resonance imaging to zoom in on clusters of water and ethanol molecules at different ABVs and different temperatures. Finally, they conducted taste tests in conjunction with a local spirits company. Nice work if you can get it. What they found surprised them. While they expected surface tension to evenly decrease as the ABV of a drink increased, it actually changed in discrete steps. These steps happened when clusters of water and ethanol molecules changed shape, shifting from more compact, pyramid-like structures to long chain-like ones. When the temperature drops, the structure becomes more compact, which is why chilled beer has a more stimulating taste. In warmer drinks or drinks with higher ABVs, more chain-like clusters dominated, and the flavour is more alcoholic. So next time you're stuck with a wine snob at a party, it will be your turn to bore them. With that, we come to the end of this month's broadcast. Once again, I thank our sponsors, shown here. Next month, Piers will be back and talking all things health and safety. It will be at the usual times UTC, but you might change your clocks before then, so it might be a new local time. Even so, I hope you can join him. Until then, keep asking questions, keep sharing, and keep safe.